Impyisi mahome impyisi nahetse. Gisa wapfuye yarihuse yariwe n'imbwa isirebera bunyenyezi bye nabayingana n'iyo nkubiri murabyumva. Gisa wapfuye yarihuse agahinda kanjye wabana kumva. Gukora imyaka impyisi mahome impyisi nahetse. Gisa wapfuye yarihuse yariwe n'imbwa isirebera bunyenyezi bye nabayingana n'iyo impyisi mahome impyisi nahetse. Gisa wapfuye yarihuse yariwe n'imbwa isirebera bunyenyezi bye nabayingana n'iyo nkubiri murabyumva. Gisa wapfuye yarihuse agahinda kanjye wabana kumva. Gukora imyaka ntarya ntaryama impyisi mahome impyisi nahetse ikanyitura kurya wo mbyara gatuna mbwene n'akandoye. Ubu zagasabo hacura intimba u Rwanda rwose ruraboroga intero twaje ari Nyamirambo igihugu cyose turarurwana miyove yose na za Nyacyonga. Iyo zabatsinda na za Gasanze Kagugu yose Gisozi nuko iyo Nyamijosi ndi kuwareba nitwarutashye imvugo idahwitse impyisi mahome impyisi nahetse impyisi bihe ubwirinanura. Iti nshyira hasi njye mu rugwiro umuhutu nsanga waragatuye ndetse n'umututsi ugihumeka nzabateranya barabanye. Abo baranywanye inyana n'imweru n'imico myinshi barayihuje ibyo ku rucunshu bibaye inziko ubwo mwana yinca babaye umwanda. Tubyina insinzi abacu bashize abandi igihugu bagihunze. Tubyina tuzi ko twibohoye kandi twiboshya kandoye. Imana ubundi yabaga iwacu ubushitani yararutashye. Mana data waremye umuntu waremye benshi waremye byinshi menye ujye unicuza aho wahombye. Mbarimo mbazi mbara ubukeye nzaba ndurana nzaba mbarirwa amazina nkayagira inkomoko. Turi mu kaga kana agahinda uvuze yuko nyirinzi apfuye si uwo mwishe si we gitera ubutumwa nk'ubu mu buhe bose. Abahanuzi ni muki twumva rwa bujindiri turamuzi mu buhanuzi bwa magayano uzaza ashaka kumara abantu. Rwa bujindiri rudahaga wari imfubya dutera inimba ubu nta muturanyi twatabaza izina wubatse urya nka ngunda. Ko mbona ugundira n'ibyo abantu b'imahanga ukamwita umwanzi bakwitaga inyangarwanda ubarushije iki kutabihakana ngo turahunabona aho guhaha. Imitungo myinshi ubu yiswe iyawe impyisi mahome impyisi nahetse ngo ni imitungo itagira beneyo. Impyisi mahome irya ntihage. Impyisi mahome irya ntihage imariye abana aho tutwa tutsi narayihetse njye ndundarunda umuruho wanjye ukubezera ubupfura mu nda bwo buri hehe. Ibi bifu byanyu ko bitanahaga. Murya karibwa n'akataribwa inda nini zanyu zimaze abantu ntimunakigira ku mateka yatubasa ubugome nk'ubu. Ndanababwira muryana inzara narababwiye ndabasubiye nimudasenyera hamwe ubundi hutu twatutse ubutatu bwacu nibuduhuze duhashye umwanzi. Ukugana nyote umuha icyanyu utarinze kwitegereza izuru ibi byaje mwize kuronda amoko. Ubwo mwe pfundo ni wo musingi wo kwigobotura ishyano nk'iri. Ko mvuga nk'ibyo mukanje inzara impyisi se nk'iyo muhetsi y'iki ko ari mahome isigaje mwebwe. Ubu mbahanuye ubupfapfa bwanyu mbaye umwanzi muzampiga. Mushege rero sinjye gitera sinjye watwaye Kizito mwumva mupende cyangwa se Rwigara. Ibi mbona nawe ni nabyo ureba inzozi ziteye uko usinzizi sinjye Karosi sinjye uzi byinshi njye ndi umuhanzi w'umuhanuzi abasaza bubu nabo ni ntabo. Mpemuke ndamukubihawe ijambo ese abo murunga n'ubu nibandi ubu mu nyangire yahawe ijambo. Ubu mvuze nk'ibu ni njye mwanzi igihugu cyose gihanze amaso. Ingingo urugunzu niho nkomoko ugeze ku cyo mu bugani wacu ingingimira ngira ni ntayo mvoma hafi sinishira babasare barimo ingona. Aba bana buzuye mu mihanda ibyabo basigiwe na base birimo abandi ngabo z'umwama batazi koga baragatoye kuko aya mazi si yayandi. Babasare barimo ingona impyisi mu bana impyisi mu banjye impyisi nahetse impyisi mahome.
You all were there. We had two very good meetings, I must say. Can I look at everybody? Can we approve for the minutes? Thank you very much, colleagues. And then, of course, we come to the most important thing of today, the exchange of views on the risk of regionalization of the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And I'm very honored that we have here 4 ambassadors with us. They all accepted the invitation wholehearted. They came from Brussels to Strasbourg. We do that every month, ambassadors, but I can imagine that it is in the current situation not so easy. So please be welcomed and thank you very much. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Ambassador Christian Ngola Nkuku, Ambassador of the Democratic Republic of Congo in the Benelux. I welcome Mr. Ambassador Terence Natahira, Ambassador of Burundi in the Benelux. I welcome Ambassador Igor Caesar, Ambassador of Rwanda to the European Union. Also, Mr. Ambassador of Angola, you came. Welcome. And we have online an expert, the former United Nations group of experts on the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's Christophe Vogel, but he will be online. Excellencies, ambassadors, dear guests online, dear colleagues, it's my pleasure to welcome you here in this meeting on the ongoing discussions regarding the critical situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This Tuesday, here in Strasbourg, the 11th of February, in the European Parliament, we had a plenary debate with the Council and with the Commission on the escalation of violence on the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And in a resolution, which we negotiated on Tuesday, and hopefully will be adopted at 12 o'clock this noon, we strongly condemn the occupation of Goma and other territories in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo by the M23 and Rwandan Defense Forces as an unacceptable breach of the DRC's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The resolution calls on Rwanda should withdraw its troops from the territory of the DRC. Rwanda and all other potential state actors in the region should cease their support to M23. We ask for the immediate end to the violence, particularly the mass killings and the use of rape as a strategic weapon of war. We express concern over the lack of coherence on EU response to the Great Lakes region's crisis and calls for the reassessment of the EU Great Lakes strategy, and we call for an immediate suspension of the MOU with Rwanda on the sustainable value chains for critical raw materials until Rwanda proves it is ceasing its interference. Dear colleagues, since our last meeting, the East African Community and the Southern African Development Community had a joint summit where they have made commendable efforts to resolve the crisis, including the conclusions of the just concluded joint summit. They called for immediately an unconditional ceasefire. The summit also demanded the withdrawal of uninvited foreign forces from the DRC and the neutralization of the Democratic Liberal Forces of Rwanda. The UN Human Rights Council, they also met on Friday the 7th of February and agreed by consensus to launch an urgent fact-finding mission and commission of inquiries into the atrocities being committed by all parties to the armed conflict. Today, more than 2 weeks have passed since the fall of Goma. And I still remember the words of Denis Mukwege, who said, "Les gens meurent comme des mouches." That's something I will never forget. And when I saw the images, when I heard that every 4 minutes a woman is raped, then I think we should continue and fight so that that violence will end. So for me, I'm very grateful that we now here have the 3 ambassadors and the ambassador of Angola who also insist. And I hope we can have a honestly debate here with respect for each and each other. I'm very grateful that ambassadors of the Republic of Congo, Rwanda and Burundi have taken the time to be with us today to share their insights and assessment of the evolving situation. As it is a delicate and sensitive matter, and I look at all sides and all people here, I invite you to take advantage of this meeting to engage in a respectful and open dialogue that would reflect our shared dedication to finding a peaceful and prompt resolution to this conflict in a spirit of international cooperation and our commitment to respecting human rights. Allow me to introduce, first of you, Mr. Ambassador Christian Ngo. C'est très difficile de prononcer votre nom, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur.
Your name is very hard to pronounce, sir. Your Excellency, Christian Dongala Nkuku, the Ambassador of the Democratic Republic of the Congo in the Benelux. Your Excellency, you have the floor. Normally we would give our speakers 8 minutes. I will give you 10 minutes. You have the floor, Ambassador. Thank you very much, Chair, distinguished members of the European Parliament. On behalf of the government and the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, allow me to express my thanks to you for giving me this opportunity to come and speak to you today, to share with you the voice of the Democratic Republic of Congo here at your institution, which is the voice of European democracy. We're very thankful as well to the members of the European Parliament for the interest that you've shown in us and in the question of the Congo, particularly in this time in which we find ourselves, where we are facing an unprecedented crisis and a resurgence of armed conflict. What the Democratic Republic of Congo is going through right now is not just any old conflict, like any other. It is a deliberate, methodical attack on a sovereign state. It is a flagrant violation of the fundamental principles of the United Nations Global Compact. And it is an unacceptable attack on peace and security at an international level. The Democratic Republic of Congo has legitimate expectations from the European Union that it take action, that it act firmly in order to safeguard peace and security in the Great Lakes region and the respective international humanitarian law. The attacks of M23, the deterioration of relations with Rwanda, and the growing involvement of other regional actors leads us to fear military escalation that could lead to a regional war. The M23 rebels have taken control of vast swaths of the east of our country in the DRC. It is a mineral-rich region, and this has led to a humanitarian and a diplomatic crisis involving multiple countries. An alarming number of African militaries have already deployed troops in the area of the conflict, which has a long history of external interference. The DRC is such a large country, and it is placed in such a way geographically that it is a part of the Southern African Development Community, the East African Community as well. So it's both a member of EAC and the SADC. Now, these two regional groupings have joined forces and organized an emergency summit on the 8th of February in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania in order to try and bring an end to the conflicts between the M23 rebels and supported by the Rwandan army and our military. My country, the Democratic Republic of Congo, would like to have peaceful means implemented in order to try and recover the territories that have been conquered by the M23 rebels with the proven help of the Rwandan military. This is Goma and other parts of the east of our country, and to prevent them from extending into other regions. If Rwanda is to invade our country, it is to seize control of our key minerals, to orchestrate an institutional change in the DRC. Now, we hear Rwanda's arguments behind this M23 offensive, but the proof is there. It's been documented and it's been shown in a number of different UN reports, and it has been largely accepted by a number of different African governments, as well as Western governments, who are calling for Rwanda to withdraw its forces from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, to date, ladies and gentlemen, it is only Rwanda which is refusing to admit to the existence of its troops on Congolese territory. Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that the regionalization of the conflict from the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is a reality, and it involves a number of different powers as well as non-state actors. It has sociological, geostrategic, and geopolitical impacts which largely exceed the borders of my country. A number of countries are involved in the conflict in the east of my country. In addition to Rwanda, we have Burundi, Uganda, Tanzania, and the SADC forces. We take this seriously, and our neighbors do as well, considering a possible extension of it onto their territory. There have been thousands of soldiers involved for years. The risk of a regionalization of this conflict is increasing and will increase if M23 continues to insist on extending southward from Goma, closer to the Burundian border where its forces are stationed. With respect to Uganda, there are also troops in the east of my country in the framework of a military cooperation to face another threat that is faced, linked to Islamic State. Now, they have supplied the vast majority of troops under this regional effort in the Eastern Africa under the UN efforts. They have noted that 14 of their soldiers have died at Rwandan military hands. And this could be considered a declaration of war. Other countries as well, like Malawi, have also lost troops on Congolese territory. So now is the opportunity for us to pay tribute to these men who lost their lives in order to defend peace and freedom. Now, as you can see, the risk of this blowing up in the region is clear. Chair, members of the European Parliament, inaction and indecision can no longer be accepted in the face of this crisis, which is threatening to throw our countries and the entire sub-region into utter chaos. And to avoid this escalation and the regionalization of the conflict, we would therefore invite the European Union to take immediate action, to take firm action with the following recommendations. The EU is invited to immediately call for a cease of hostilities by Rwanda and the immediate withdrawal of its troops from Congolese territory. The EU must impose a complete embargo on all exports of all minerals with a Rwandan label, particularly gold and coltan, in order to end the illegal exploitation of natural resources, which are a result of the war in the Democratic Republic of Congo and the control of Rwanda over these critical minerals. The EU should also immediately sign these agreements. The EU is also called to immediately support a system of systematic notification for all transfers of Rwandan arms to the international community. This would ensure that arms are only used in order to are not used in order to equip troops under the embargo. Ladies and gentlemen, the world is watching you, Africa is watching you, and the Democratic Republic of Congo is watching you. We cannot remain silent in the face of these barbaric acts. We cannot remain indifferent to these systematic violations of international law. Words are no longer enough. It is time for action. The resolution that you will be voting on today is an opportunity for you to show the world your commitment to the values of peace and justice, which are the foundation of our civilization. The gesture that you will make this afternoon on voting on this resolution will not only be a show of solidarity to the Congolese people, it will also show you the position that you have on the side of law and justice. Are you on the side of the law and justice, or are you on the side of violence and flagrant disrespect for international rules? This is what your vote this afternoon is asking you to tell us. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Lom.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your comments. Your message has been heard. Congo and Africa affect us all directly, those of us who are here in this room today, and that's why we had the debate we had on Tuesday, and we look forward to, like you, having a large majority in favor of this adoption, and which will call on the Commission and the EU to act. So, with that,
Ambassador of Burundi, Excellency Mr. Teres Nahiraya, who will share his view on the conflict that is also affecting neighboring countries, including your country. Mr. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Madame la Présidente.
Madam Chair, honourable MEPs, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Burundi delegation is pleased that this meeting has been convened by the European Parliament on the risk of the spread regionally of the problems in the DRC, and we're grateful to be here. Thank you very much for this invitation, Madam, which is an opportunity to testify to the good cooperation which exists between Burundi and the EU. Madam, indeed, the Burundi delegation is concerned at the unprecedented humanitarian disaster, and we think about what has been happening there, and the huge number. It's thought that there are now 1 million internally displaced people, and we need to think about the M23 armed group, which has the military support of Rwanda, in spite of the intrinsic aspects of international relations established by the UN. We take this particular opportunity to restate, on behalf of the government of Burundi, our solidarity with the people and government of Congo, and to express our sympathy and condolences to them, and our tributes to the blue helmets and from SADC and other UN agencies who've made the final sacrifice to the benefit of the people there. Madam, the DRC is facing a complex political and security situation characterized by a conflict and attacks by an armed group. Since 2020, think about in Kivu in the DRC has been the theater of war between governmental and M23 forces. The latter, supported by Rwanda, continue to threaten that area and is supported by others. There has been a massive move of population, exacerbating the unprecedented humanitarian situation. And this situation has caused massive displacement of population and thousands of deaths. The living conditions there are highly unstable, and the populations moved face major health and food crises. Madam, distinguished deputies, Burundi supports the decision taken in Geneva by the Human Rights Council of the UN, a meeting convened by member states, including Burundi, Belgium, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and many others. And this resolution was adopted by all the 47 members of the Council and explicitly acknowledged the responsibility of Rwanda in the atrocities committed on the soil of the DRC. Burundi also welcomes the communiqué made public at the end of the joint summit by SADC, held in Dar es Salaam on the 8th of February of this year. Now, that communiqué reflects the situation there, and it restates the respect for sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Madam, the Human Rights Council of the UN and SADC and international community set out their concern faced with the situation in the DRC and must take adequate measures in order to save the population of the Congo and respect the sovereignty of that country. It's high time to move from words to deeds to ensure that the security situation of the DRC does not worsen further. Madam, honourable deputies, the Burundi would like to underscore the serious security situation in DRC and the continued worsening of the security situation and how this threatens not just local peace and security, but also poses a challenge to maintaining peace and security internationally. Burundi asks for respect of peaceful means and the territorial integrity, and categorically rejects forced movements of population. The DRC has always suffered from such attacks. Now, it's important to remember the need to find a lasting solution to these crises. This process, which has involved various initiatives supported by the EU and international community, is trying to set out a clear roadmap to ensure lasting peace. Madam, the UN experts report traces how this is unfolded and the involvement of internal and external actors, flagrant violations of human rights, and systematic looting of the mineral resources of DRC. This cannot be ignored. The UN Human Rights Council has underscored that it's essential that the EU, which is a privileged and reliable partner, take specific and practical and binding measures against the perpetrators of this awful situation at DRC, and to stop interference and to ensure that international law and international humanitarian law be respected. Madam, at the moment, we don't know the details of the report being prepared, but these are constantly replaced. And we need to think about the actors. We know who the perpetrators are. This is picked up in the experts' report by the UN, the fundamental principles written in the UN Charter, which guide the actions of the UN, are familiar to all. Yet, until now, I turn to you, and I can tell you that we have not yet seen any resolutions except to condemn the perpetrations of these acts, but little action. Madam, dear deputies, now what are we going to do at European level and institutional level, where everyone talks about human rights, pursues the certain models? Now, we can only repeat this and the importance for DRC. Territory of that country cannot be compromised, and it's witnessed cyclical violence there. This must cease immediately. Everyone asks why the international community permits this, in particular Europe and the US, faced with this dramatic situation, remains inactive, in spite of the reports of some MEPs who try to draw attention to it. Now, it seems that no resolution referring to this, to the humanitarian situation, has led to action so far. That's a shame. But fortunately, with your support, at least a draft report is being prepared. Bravo. But nonetheless, relevant questions remain. What is the hidden agenda behind this protracted silence? What is going on? And we've seen that the rebels are escalating their action. M23 controls Goma, and this has triggered catastrophic humanitarian situation, not just in DRC, but in the whole Great Lakes region. Now, faced with this terrible situation, the international community, and in particular the EU, cannot remain simply as indifferent observers. This disaster was pre-announced. Madam, Burundi urges the EU and the UN and other stakeholders in the Great Lakes region to do everything in their powers to ensure that there be an immediate ceasefire and to ensure that the territory of DRC is no longer the scene of fighters between them. And we hope that these processes in Rwanda and elsewhere will actually respect commitments entered into. And we hope that we support the authorities of DRC to re-establish their power over this and to demand the withdrawal of hostile forces and to re-establish law and order there and to bring about support for the civilian population and to displaced people, so if need be, they can, or if so wish, they can return home. And finally, to take restrictive measures or sanctions through resolutions against all perpetrators of human rights violations which have been perpetrated in this region, and to re-establish sovereignty of this country. Madam, the EU must be attentive to the legitimate claims and demands of the Congolese government and people, and we can guarantee, we must guarantee the DRC refined peace, security and stability and for the whole region. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Ambassador. I will now give the floor to the Ambassador of Rwanda, Excellency Mr. Igor Cesar, who will share his view on the conflict. Mr. Ambassador, as you're aware via several media sources, allegedly Rwanda has been involved directly or indirectly in the conflict in eastern DRC. We would like to hear from you, Mr. Ambassador. What is the role of Rwanda, and how do you see the implementation of the joint decisions of the EIC SIDC summit? Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. You have the floor.
Honorable members of the European Parliament, Excellencies, Ambassadors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the government of Rwanda, I would like to express my appreciation for this opportunity to discuss the ongoing crisis in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo from Rwanda's perspective. For too long, instability in the DRC has threatened regional security with devastating human, political, and economic consequences. Rwanda has nothing to gain from an unstable DRC. On the contrary, our vision for prosperity is tied to regional stability and economic cooperation. In 2021, Rwanda exported $683 million worth of goods to the DRC. In 2022, the DRC was our top export partner, accounting for over 33% of our total export. Why would we jeopardize this? Rwanda's best interest and economic ambitions are better served by peace and no conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move beyond lazy narratives and focus on facts. Rwanda is not the source of this crisis, nor are we responsible for solving it alone. The truth is well documented. The real smuggling networks are known. The real perpetrators are well documented. And yet, the scrutiny always falls on Rwanda. Why? Partly because of the finger-pointing strategy we have just heard of this panel, and because acknowledging the truth would require real accountability from those who prefer to shift blame rather than fix a broken mining system. Regarding the MOU signed last year, repeatedly brought up today, let me remind you that it was the European Union that initiated the request to sign an MOU on critical raw materials. We engage in this agreement in good faith because it aligned with our vision and pre-existing strategies. The demand for these minerals is a shared interest, and we remain committed to partnerships built on mutual benefit and respect. Ladies and gentlemen, the atrocities we're discussing today are horrifying. They demand our full attention, and most importantly, accountability. But accountability must be rooted in facts, not assumptions or false shortcuts. As security forces retreated after the fall of Goma, reports of atrocities surged. Instinct dictates to point fingers outwards rather than look inwards. But the evidence speaks for itself. In 2020, the US Department of State documented that the DRC's own security forces were responsible for arbitrary killings, enforced disappearance, and torture. According to the UN Joint Human Rights Office, since 2019, the Congolese security services have remained the leading human rights perpetrators in DRC. This is not new. This is not accidental. It is a pattern. However, this parliament remains silent on this issue. Just like there was silence when the 2022 Paul Institute reported that the Kinshasa-backed FDLR were responsible for the assassination of Italian ambassador Luca Attanasio in 2021, just as it remained silent when over 2,000 European mercenaries were illegally hired by Kinshasa to wage war on its own population, in blatant violation of African Union and UN conventions. How long will your silence continue? Ladies and gentlemen, the situation in the DRC is a threat to Rwanda's national security and to the stability of the whole region. Despite calls for a political solution, the DRC government has chosen to pursue a military path, forming a coalition with ethnic militia known as Wazalendo, the FDLR, European mercenary, Burundian forces, and the Sami DRC. This reckless strategy to pursue every possible option except genuine negotiations continues to undermine regional peace efforts and fuel instability. This strategy has failed before, and if sustained, it will fail again. If withdrawing development support could resolve the DRC conflict, it would have worked 12 years ago. Such international responses are ineffective and counterproductive. Worse, they only serve to embolden the DRC's war path. Rwanda is fully committed to contribute to finding a peaceful end to the conflict, not just for our own stability, but for the prosperity of the entire region. We want peace so we can focus on the urgent task of nation building and regional cooperation, including with the DRC. A stable, secure Great Lakes region benefits us all. The only viable path forward is dialogue, as reaffirmed by the recent East Africa Communique SADC Joint Summit. The first time both regional blocs have aligned their vision for a lasting solution. We now have a renewed opportunity to reset the political process and move towards genuine resolution. The outcomes of the regional summit, cessation of hostilities, humanitarian action, and return to direct negotiations must be implemented in good faith. Rwanda has no expansionist agenda. We are not looking to redraw the borders we inherited from colonialism. All we want is credible, long-term peace for the development of our region that is dire needed and deserved. Therefore, Rwanda remains committed to peace, stability, and working with all partners, including the European Union, to find a lasting resolution to this crisis. But peace requires courage, accountability, and rejecting the forces that fuel division and violence. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I now would like to give the floor for 2 minutes to the Ambassador of Angola, and then I will go to the members.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Government of Angola. I would like to thank you for inviting us to speak to you today to join this important meeting. We're very pleased to see here in this room Their Excellencies, the ambassadors of the Democratic Republic of Congo, of Burundi, and of Rwanda. And we're also very pleased to see the members of European Parliament here in this meeting today as well. Chair, as you know, Angola, through João Manuel González Lourenço, the President of the Republic of Angola, has always stood up for peace in the African Union and plays an important role in the resolution of conflicts affecting the Central African sub-region. On numerous occasions, my country's authorities have encouraged the parties involved in this conflict to work together in an inclusive dialogue under the Rwanda and Nairobi processes. Chair, my country, through His Excellency the President, João Lourenço, believes in the value of dialogue and peace. And we will continue to insist on that as long as we have not been proven wrong. And it is in that spirit that our president has offered to work as a mediator. In the coming days, he will be appointed president of the African Union, and he will be working in that role. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would now like to open up the floor to members to ask questions, and we'll start with the president of the Devi Committee, Barry Andrews. You have the floor.
Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair.
To thank you for the invitation to be here today. Obviously, the focus of this discussion today is on conflict resolution. And I come from a country where we were plagued by conflict, and we were very fortunate to have neighbours that cared about resolving the conflict, and we had leaders that were dedicated to the resolution of the conflict, and happily we were able to find agreement. So it's good that we're having this dialogue, because all of these conflicts can only end in dialogue and trust and peace building. On behalf of the Development Committee, I would like the ambassadors to, if they could, to address the question of humanitarian access. We absolutely need to come to an agreement on that basis. Humanitarian access is about independence, impartiality. It's not about taking sides in conflict. I would also like to ask the ambassador from Rwanda. The president of Rwanda told CNN in an interview, when asked if Rwandan forces were in DRC, he said, "I don't know." Now, the president is, of course, the commander-in-chief of the Rwandan armed forces. You have given a definitive indication today that, in fact, they're not in DRC. So perhaps you could just resolve that confusion for us as well today. Thank you, Hilda.
Thank you very much. Then I will give the floor. We will take some questions and then we will go to the ambassadors for the answers. So just that you know, I go to the EPP, Madame Terlaak.
Merci. Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you all for joining us and being here. And I think it's good to see the ambassador from Rwanda as well as the ambassador from Congo, Burundi and Angola here in the same room. I think that should be hopeful and maybe a start for talks. And as my colleague from Mr. Andrews said, that is the start for peace. It will always start with a dialogue in a diplomatic way. And I really would like to stress out the really deploring humanitarian situation. And I really want to call upon all the players in the field, please make this humanitarian corridor possible as soon as possible. There was a ceasefire it lasted only for 2 days. Then the fight started again. And what we saw in those 2 days of ceasefire, we saw that the people of Goma tried to bury, I believe it was over 2,000 bodies who has been dead for a week or even over a week. And it's really a great health concern that those bodies were out there in the streets without refrigerating capacities. So to what extent will diseases will spread in the region? We really need this humanitarian corridor, and we need good healthcare and access to sanitary needs. So I really ponder that. And then I will also ask both for the Rwandese ambassador and the Congolese ambassador. You said, Mr. Cesar, you said you need courageous and accountability from all parties. What is your courageous and accountability to create peace in the region, also from Rwandan sides? And then on the Mr. Nukuku, it was. Can you please help us to secure safety in Kinshasa for our foreign aid workers, humanitarian aid workers, but also for our embassies? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ingeborg. Then I will go to the SND, Madam May.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Your Excellencies, the ambassadors, to be here and to share your stories with us. I understand that this is maybe not always comfortable. Let me start also by emphasizing the need for access for humanitarian assistance. And I think in her introduction, the Chair alluded to the situation, the humanitarian situation in Eastern Congo and also in other areas where we see that so many people are in need of assistance, but also so many atrocities are taking place, especially when sexual assault and sexual violence is taking place against women and girls on such a large scale, which is something that we have debated and condemned here in this Parliament also previously. But then I think to the more, let's say, uncomfortable topic of today is maybe a little bit the parallel worlds and the parallel truth that we are experiencing from the different introductions from the Excellencies. And there I think it would be good if we see if we can come a little bit more together and understand that we are in the same on the same page, because if you want to take a next step to a solution, you have to somehow get on the same page. Maybe just to suggest something that a previous speaker in another session we had this morning suggested is, of course, one of the things that is being that is the fuel for this conflict is the critical raw materials and the need for those critical raw materials. Also for us here, and I think probably if we look around here, the Congo is present in a physical form in some of the critical raw materials in our phones or in the screens and so on. We need them for our digital transition, we need them for our energy transition, but we are not aware of where these critical raw materials are coming from. And I understand the MOU was initiated by the European Union. We as a Parliament did not have an oversight over that MOU, so we do not know, you as an ambassador, Your Excellency, probably know more about it than we do. But we do have a feeling that some of those critical raw materials that through this MOU are being exported are not necessarily coming from Rwanda, but maybe coming from other areas, for example, in the Kivus in Eastern Congo. So the suggestion that a previous speaker made that we come to a kind of Kimberley process for critical raw materials. The Kimberley process, of course, was initiated for diamonds, for blood diamonds. Now we see that we have maybe blood iPhones, which we don't want. So I want to bring this suggestion here to the table and also listen to what your ambassadors, your excellencies, both from the Congo and from Rwanda, would think of such solution, and if we can work towards such a solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will ask the speakers to more or less keep less than 2 minutes, otherwise we will not arrive. All the members, Mr. Ambassadors, that you hear now, they all negotiated with me on the resolution the last days. So they all are very much involved. So I would like to thank them. The third speaker is Terry Mariani.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair. As the ambassador of Burundi said, everyone is looking to the EU, wondering what they're doing, and I would say that's been the case for 30 years. The resolution that we'll be voting on is a step in the right direction, and we will be voting in favor of it, even though my group, had actually called for stronger sanctions against those responsible in Rwanda. Now, I saw in Jeune Afrique that the president of Rwanda seemed to not think that this was important, that it wasn't going to affect him. Now, I have a very simple question, which reflects that said by previous speakers. With respect to these critical raw materials, they play a key role in this decades-long conflict. It's been said that the EU has got this memorandum of understanding with Rwanda. It's actually going to be a year old on February 18th, because it was signed on February 18th, 2024. And to date, we have absolutely no information about it. And let me turn to my colleagues in the majority parties. In the INTA committee, for more than 6 months now, I have been asking for information on this. Finally, we got a copy of the text of the agreement, which doesn't guarantee any traceability, because it's simply a traceability as a declaration, and that's not Rwanda's fault. That's actually what the agreement says. So we're sharing the responsibility there. the risk of sounding insistent and knowing we have this humanitarian crisis that we're facing, we finally managed to get a meeting of the monitoring group organized for next week. No interpretation in camera. Hopefully they'll let us turn the lights on so we can see what we're doing. But let me turn to you, Chair. You hold a position of power in this Parliament. I would think it would be the least that the Intercommittee could do. Now, our Parliament would do, because obviously the committee is an expression of the Parliament, that they would at least have information together with the DEVE Committee about this agreement that has been in place for the past year. How does it work? What's the traceability? We signed it, so we have a responsibility to follow it. There are no concrete proofs required for traceability. You would think that we could at least work on that in order to remove at least one of the causes of this war and take a small step towards peace. So looking at the four ambassadors with us in the room, it's nice to see that they can speak calmly with each other, share this moment. That might be a step towards finding a solution as well. But again, the resolution that we will be voting on this afternoon is certainly a step in the right direction. Thank you. No, it didn't sound like you were asking the ambassadors a question, but you were asking me a question. So I can tell you that we asked that we be allowed to attend that exchange of views on the critical minerals. And in public, not in camera, please. The chair. Well, I'll try, but I'm just one woman. I will put all my possible weight behind this request, sir. We'll move now to the next speaker.
Mr. It's always so difficult to pronounce your name. Satouri. I don't know if I say it well. You have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for organizing this meeting. Now, I know you can't have peace with dialogue, and that's why it's so important that we have this dialogue, but you also can't have peace without justice. And I don't see this understanding here that the parallel versions are going to be eclipsing the humanitarian crisis, the deaths and everything that we're seeing, the rape being used as a weapon of war. That's completely intolerable. Those of us on the European Union side need to be committed to this. We need to call for this, a commitment to be suspended, that an arms embargo be laid down, and that those who are responsible for the war crimes be brought to justice, because you will never have a lasting peace without justice. But peace also comes from dialogue and from shared responsibility. So, to the ambassadors, under what conditions will you see it possible for us to exit the conflict and enter into a situation of cooperation? To my Congolese and Rwandan ambassadors here, can you commit to the Rwandan ambassador, can you say that your troops are not in the country? And can we also have proof that M23 isn't just a proxy of Rwanda? At what point will you take the responsibility for your country and undertake activities in this? I will reflect one point that you said, and that is that regional cooperation leads to prosperity for all. So when will you take up your responsibility and seriously commit to a peace process and the restoration of regional cooperation?
Very much. I still have two speakers, and then I will go to the ambassadors for their answers. Mr. Udo Bullmann.
Thank you, Chair. And let me address to Our Excellencies with two questions. The first one goes to the Ambassador of Congo and Rwanda, both of you. This military conflict has already seen a kind of irresponsibility on more than one side. It has seen incredible amounts of victims, and it has seen, let me call it, a policy of sexual violence which has not been foreseen any earlier. Instead of defending diplomatically the position of your government, we in this House would expect you to contribute with a constructive solution to what is going on, to creating peace and to creating decent lives for all those who have been victims of this irresponsible conflict. We are waiting for your constructive remarks, what your respective government is going to do to end the conflict. and to find sustainable peace. My second remark goes to the ambassador of Rwanda. Your country has built up a reputation, a positive reputation during the last years, a reputation of a government which was able to overcome tragedies of the past, a reputation of a government which is able to produce perspectives for its own people, producing public goods and securing welfare for the future of the young generation. Are you realizing that this reputation at the very moment, in the eyes of the international community, is not only at risk, but it is ruined? And what are your consequences of this situation, which we are really sorry about? We will have, it was mentioned already next week, a monitoring group in the Trade Committee, and I'm pretty sure we will come to critical conclusions.
Thank you very much. I still have one speaker, Mr. Botenga.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Tout d'abord, oui.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the resolution that we will be voting on this afternoon is a very important one. The European Union needs to send a clear signal that it is on the side of international law and the principles of the United Nations Charter, which apply to all. I have got two questions. Just two specific questions. First of all, we welcome the role of diplomacy of different African countries who are trying to resolve this conflict. I think that is absolutely essential. So my two questions. One, for the ambassador of Rwanda, you said that it's been documented that the contraband is not going through Rwanda, that there are other networks in place. So I would ask you, which are those? Because the UN experts are actually saying that it is going through Rwanda. So if you have other information, it would be helpful to have that and to know where the truth lies. And my second question to the ambassador of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Well, it's clear that the whole question of minerals is a key one. This is a discussion that has been going on for years. So my question is, what measures should the EU be taking in order to ensure that the people of the DRC can have sovereign control over their own resources and ensure fair trade regionally? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then at the end, I myself have two questions actually to the ambassador of Congo. For me, what's not really clear is, do you have an estimated number of people who are displaced due to violence, and how we can help them? Because that's really a question that we ask ourselves here. I'm sorry. And secondly, to what extent is your government prepared to engage in negotiations with Rwanda to de-escalate tensions and improve relations and seek a long-lasting resolution for the peace? Because I think, yeah, one moment or another, we have to put the governments together. But that's my personal opinion. So I now would like to give the floor first to the ambassador of Burundi, and then we go to the ambassador of Congo, and then to the ambassador of Rwanda, who got most of the questions. And then maybe to conclude, I go back to Angola. Mr. Ambassador of Burundi.
Merci, Madame la.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to thank the members of the European Parliament for their questions and comments, and those calling for an effective solution. Chair, we cannot wait for these armed criminals to stop the war on their own, so that we can have access to the materials. It's just not going to happen. We need to have specific measures taken against them. So there are two processes to consider. First, we need to have sanctions put into place against the actors behind this, the aggressors, the M23, and to then bring them to a dialogue. That would be the second part. We can call for dialogue, but while you still have these arrogant actors in place, where will be the dialogue? Now, we already heard what our MEP, what our member said about the interview on CNN and the comments there. Also on Voice of America. We see the different views that are expressed. I think really the facts speak for themselves. First, we need sanctions. We need to have measures against the aggressors, against the criminals. And that will require them to come to the table, to put their weapons down, and to start dialogue. Thank you.
Mr. Ambassador, I will now go to Mr. Ambassador of Congo. You have the floor.
Mesdames et messieurs,
members, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for all of your contributions and for the questions put to us. Let me begin with a question regarding the humanitarian situation. First of all, we ask that the M23 allow access to Goma Airport because it's a crucial point to be able to funnel in aid. Secondly, the same rebels must allow a humanitarian corridor so that aid can reach those who've been hardest hit. Those are the two key points to be able to act swiftly in the short term to ease the burden and the suffering on those who've been hit. In the long term, necessarily, it will be the end of hostilities to have an immediate ceasefire so that we can then move up on that and have much easier access to all those who are suffering. One question was put regarding the security of ambassadorial residences. Well, let me take the opportunity to give you the position of the DRC. Well, the Republic of Congo deplores what is happening in Kinshasa and the assaults on some embassies. That initiative by some parts of the population is in no way the position of the DRC. In no way. It's not a justification or an excuse, but perhaps you can explain if I tell you that there's some infuriation on part of the population at the apparent inactivity of the international community. It's not an excuse, but perhaps that's what's behind it. The Democratic Republic of the Congo has taken measures to guarantee protection of embassies and embassy staff, you can be assured. Then there was another question on the conditions that might make it possible to emerge from this situation. But the conditions are there. The framework's been set up. On the one hand, the agreements in the context of Rwanda, which just regard the state, and then there are the Nairobi agreements regarding non-state actors, for example, the armed groups. Yes, for those initiatives to be set up, it'll take courage, but the DRC has expressed its determination to bring that about peacefully. Yes, it takes courage, but to talk to the aggressor states is already a step. It shows great courage. We accept to sit down at a table in Rwanda together with a representative of Rwanda. It's a sign of courage. We accepted to put M23, to have them around the table in Nairobi following violence. They were in the violence they were perpetrating in the east of my country, but nonetheless, we showed determination and courage, and we opened the door. We opened the negotiating table to that movement. So I think the framework is clearly established for the states, Rwanda and the DRC, and just for Rwanda and for non-state actors, Nairobi. So yes, to negotiate with M23, but only in the context, a clearly defined context, which is the context of the Nairobi framework. There was also a question regarding strategic minerals. Well, there is no justification but that agreement was signed to guarantee some traceability, and the position of the DRC is clear. Yes, we all agree about traceability, but how should we ensure it? How can we do that, and how can we limit smuggling of those minerals? And now we want that traceability, which has been asked for on all sides, we want it to actually take place. We're not talking about depots in major cities, but we want it to begin at the mines. Only then can we really ensure traceability effectively. And that's what we expect from the EU. Finally, I've said, and I repeat, we want the EU to impose a total embargo on exports of all minerals, coltan or ore, gold, to stop the illegal export of natural resources which stoke the conflict in the east of Congo. And that's why we've always referred to strategic minerals. Thank you, Ambassador. I now turn to the Ambassador of Rwanda. Ambassador, I think a lot of questions were towards you, so I give you the floor.
So let me start with the question that keeps on coming, the question of our RDF being in Congo or not. Let's put it into the context. Eastern DRC has been a lawless region for the last 3 decades. Hundreds of armed groups have been operating there, many of which dedicated to destabilizing Rwanda. The only reason why Rwanda is as stable as it is today is because we have continuously maintained a capacity to act against this threat before they materialize on Rwanda's soil, with devastating impact. In most cases, we've been able to address these threats jointly with the government of DRC or with DRC's green light. However, when faced with the government that refuses to cooperate to address mutual security challenges in that area and chooses instead to support anti-Rwanda armed groups by mobilizing them, arming them, funding them, and legitimizing them, we have no choice but acting on our own by establishing heightened defensive measures along our border area. This is the unfortunate situation we are in today. Going back to the question of the claims that Rwanda is actively involved in DRC because of the mineral resources. As I've explained in my comments, this is long-standing, lazy and demonstrably false narrative, deliberately pushed by the DRC government and its allies. Rwanda's vision for economic development lies in cooperation and integration, and the data is there to prove it. Rwanda benefits much more from cross-border trade, including in mineral resources, than from any form of imaginary plundering. So anyone who is saying that I said that we don't trade mineral with Congo, it's a false statement. I never denied that we trade with Congo. Actually, the MOU provides the possibility for traceability in which we have already complied on our side when it comes to our exploitation of minerals and also in the trade. So we already comply on international standards. It is up to Congo to do its part. in the question, there is something that in these questions is always ignored. I haven't heard anyone talk about FDLR presence in Congo. I haven't heard anyone talking about the threat of FDLR to the security of Congo and to the security of Rwanda. So I would like to note that it is a security threat to Rwanda, and the level right now of the government of Rwanda, of the government of DRC and Burundi working directly with FDLR on an offensive position and being positioned on the border of Rwanda constitute a direct threat to the sovereignty of Rwanda. I would like to also say one thing. Don't have I hope that the European Union takes time to look at the map. Crossing Rwanda from east to west or from west to east is not more than 200 kilometers. So the in-depth strategy when we counter threats is a lot different than the politics in Kinshasa, 2,700 kilometers away. So defensive, as longer Rwanda reserves its right to use defensive measures, because that's the pact with the Rwandan population. We took a path of development, of social cohesion, and anything that threatens that pact, Rwanda has to defend itself. I hope that you take these things always into account. Hate speech is a reality. It is documented. You talk about rape
Mr. Ambassador, I was there. I talked to women who were raped. Exactly. I saw them. They were small children. So please, let's end this atrocities over there.
Exactly. We had rape as the first time in the UN. The first time in the UN when they talk rape as a weapon, it has been done in a context of a genocidal force that exists today in Rwanda that you are not even mentioning here. And I hope that when you talk about rape, which I agree exists in Congo, you also name who do it. It is the FDLR forces and FRDC. And if you want, do the right inquiry instead of trying to not name perpetrators on this. We have had it in UN in 1994. The same forces are living today in Congo, are working parallel with the countries of my colleagues here, Burundi and Congo. So if we are talking about sexual assaults as a weapon, we have seen it, we have lived it in 1994, and we have seen it continuing in Congo, and we deplore that it still exists. Mm-hmm. But please, don't blame the wrong party on this one.
Okay, I had Ambassador of Burundi who really wanted to react on your questions of the FDLR in Congo. Mr. Ambassador?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Moi, ça me pose la question. Bon.
Thank you very much, madam. Yes. I think we need to bear in mind whether we're talking about competent now. Some of them are just 14. Sometimes I wonder, well, personally, I've never seen such a group of that age. We have to go back to 94 and what happened then. If I just think about what happened then, when there was genocide in Rwanda, and think about how old people were then. We know what happened then, but does that still exist? The same people? We have to think how it's been used as a kind of weapon to move forward and to try and gain hold of the minerals. But that's not the same now. We're aware of what's happening in Rwanda. We have to think about that. We have to think about others. We have to think about what we're talking about. And we've heard about this and what's happening on the borders together with Rwanda, and 1 year has moved on. But why? Well, security, we have to be aware about this. We've heard about eyewitnesses in Goma or wherever else. And yes, investigations have been done. They've been killed there. We've had to think about them and where they've been trapped. All of these things were held. We have to think about what's happened. These things are known. Then we have to think about those who move through Congo. Now, a year ago, we need to think about them, and about 20% of the population who were affected. We have to think about what happened just one weekend. There was an event, and they came and killed a whole village. That's why we have to think about this. Thanks, even though there's an agreement between RDC and Burundi, we have to think about this. But the facts are there on the ground. I think the head of state was quite clear. The head of Burundi was perfectly clear. It's not to be polemical, but the facts are there on the ground. We need to be about this. We know that the Rwandans revolt. What more evidence do you want? Let's not be hypocrites and Pharisees. Let's acknowledge what is there on the ground. And the EU needs to acknowledge this. We need to think about what's actually happening. And it's also committed from Rwanda, the Rwandan side. We need adequate measures. We need to be sure that if we're caught short by this, whether the UN or the EU or whatever, there needs to be dialogue. The process is there. We were expected this. Yes, we need effective steps. Thank you. Thank you. Again, I give the floor to the ambassador of Congo.
We have to bring this to an end soon because we still have our expert who's joined us online, and we need to give him time for his comments as well. To the ambassador. Thank you very much, Chair. If I could just clarify one point on this distortion of the facts around the presence of Rwandan troops on DRC territory. Let me just clarify that this claim does not come from the Congo. It doesn't come from the DRC. It doesn't come from the actors on the ground. Rather, it is based on a report drafted by UN experts, which have said that on Congolese territory there are some 3,000 to 4,000 troops from Rwanda